Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, France probes international banking group BNP for alleged complicity in crimes against humanity in Sudan, following a complaint filed by the International Federation for Human Rights. Also, seven close allies of a former Ivorian rebel leader are released from prison as the government tries to diffuse mounting tensions ahead of the October presidential vote. And Cameroon sand divers risk their lives to plunge into the icy waters of the Sanaga River in search of sand for the building industry. It's backbreaking and dangerous work that claims around half a dozen lives every year. But first, French prosecutors have opened a preliminary inquiry into banking giant BNP Paribas over claims of complicity in crimes against humanity, genocide, and torture in Sudan. The bank's accused of having ignored the embargo against the regime of Omar al-Bashir. It's the second criminal investigation into BNP in France, following allegations that it was complicit in the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsis. Wassine Cornet has the details.
Did French bank BNP Paribas facilitate crimes against humanity in Darfur in the early 2000s? Prosecutors in France have opened an inquiry into the matter after several people and organizations filed a complaint against the bank last year. The International Federation of Human Rights, the Human Rights League, and 9 Sudanese victims accuse BNP Paribas of having ignored the embargo that was in place at the time against the government of dictator Omar al-Bashir.
En juin 2014, la banque avait été soumise à une amende record de près de 9 milliards de dollars par le département de la justice américain pour avoir violé l'embargo et, selon la position du département de la justice à l'époque, agi au moins entre 2002 et 2008 comme une banque centrale de facto pour les autorités soudanaises.
At the time, the United States and other countries had declared an embargo against Sudan's government because of the numerous crimes against humanity that were being committed in war-torn Darfur. Since then, those crimes have been called a genocide, and the plaintiffs believe the link between the bank and that genocide is clear.
Tous les jours, on le voit et on en est témoin à la FIDH, derrière les graves atrocités, derrière les crimes de masse, se cache souvent de l'argent et des capacités financières pour que des autorités ou des groupes non étatiques puissent perpétrer des crimes de cette ampleur.
BNP Paribas has said it has no information regarding the opening of a probe. The bank is already under investigation in the United States, where Sudanese refugees have also filed a complaint for similar reasons.
Well, ahead of October's presidential election, Ivory Coast tried to appease critics of incumbent Alassane Ouattara by releasing jailed allies of opposition leader Guillaume Soro. Ouattara's bid for a third term in office has led to violent protests. The freeing of the detainees is a surprise move from a government that has been cracking down on dissent in the run-up to polls. Sam Bradpeace has more.
In late December 2019, around 20 close associates of Guillaume Soro were arrested and charged with attempting to undermine the security of the state. In a surprise move on Wednesday night, around half of them were released from custody. At the time of their arrest, Amnesty International said that the charges pressed against Soro's associates and Soro himself appeared to be politically motivated. It's worth noting that Soro is a very popular figure here in Ivory Coast who wanted to run in the presidential election scheduled for October. He was told he wasn't allowed to do so by the country's constitutional court. Now, the release of his associates is strictly conditional. They've been told they can't take part in online activism and they also can't take part in meetings. These restrictions won't come as a surprise to many observers here in Ivory Coast, where the government has been very strict on voices of dissent. In fact, all protests have been banned through to the end of September. However, it does come as a bit of a surprise that these prisoners were released in the first place, and is perhaps a sign that the government is trying to appease the opposition, who have been calling for civil disobedience in response to Ouattara's bid for a third term in office.
Sam Bradpeace there for us. Now in Kenya, 3 non-Muslim bus passengers have been abducted by suspected Somali extremists. Armed gunmen believed to be al-Shabaab rebels stopped the bus near Lafay town in Mandera County near the Somalian border and picked out the trio before ordering the other 51 people on board to leave. The bus didn't have a police escort, which is mandatory for commercial transport travelling through Mandera, which is a hotspot for extremist violence. Now, DR Congo's government has sent a delegation of half a dozen former warlords as peace envoys to the turbulent province of Ituri. Amongst the group is Germain Katanga, who was sentenced for war crimes by the ICC in 2014. The envoys are trying to convince militia there that have been blamed for the deaths of thousands of civilians since 2017 to disarm.
In Ituri, in northeast Congo, a convoy of former warlords. They have come to encourage a militia called Codeco to disarm. The militia says it defends the Lendu community, who are mainly farmers. The armed group is accused of having killed hundreds of herders from the Hema ethnic group. Among the former warlords there is Germain Katanga. He was sentenced by the International Criminal Court for war crimes. After several years in jail in The Hague and in Congo, he was released in March. Germain Katanga said the discussions with the militia went well.
À la fin des comptes, on s'est mis d'accord sur un point que d'un moment à l'autre, dès que le chef de l'État va répondre à leur cahier de charges ou à leur intégration dans l'armée ou dans la police ou bien à la réinsertion communautaire, tout ira dans le bon.
The former warlords are trying to reduce tensions between the different ethnic groups. Locals said violence has diminished since the envoy's arrival. According to the United Nations, these last 3 years, more than 1,000 civilians have been killed in Ituri.
In Cameroon, many young men living around the Sanaga River risked their lives mining sand. Relying on canoes and buckets, divers, many of whom can't swim properly, plunge hundreds of times into the water per shift. It's backbreaking and dangerous work, but a lack of job options means few feel that they have other ways of making a living. Our team reports.
An aerial view of Cameroon's longest river. Divers sail boats along the Sanaga River in search of sand. Among them is Prosper. A miner dives repeatedly to extract sand from beneath the turbulent waters. He can descend as deeply as 3 meters into the fast-flowing river.
When we dive, we have to fill the bucket.
400 buckets fill a boat. The job can be deadly and miners often drown. In a year, at least 6 persons disappear in the brown waters.
I lost a colleague. I noticed he'd been down for longer than usual. I shouted. His workmates came. We got the body out. It took me a year before I could go near water again.
After the accident, Prosper couldn't find other work and eventually had no choice but to return to the dangers of the river. This morning he's gone to the port to sell his weekly truckload of sand. The resource is used for building and 20 tons goes for 60,000 francs CFA, barely 100 euros. The meager amount is shared amongst his entire team.
The money we get doesn't match the expenses. We have machines, truck fillers, and divers. In the end, you're left with just 9,000 francs.
After hours of tedious work, Prosper heads home with about 9,000 francs CFA, less than 15 euros. His family are always relieved to see him return.
I'm really not happy when he goes there, because it's a difficult job. I would love to see him do something else, like farming work.
But he doesn't have the capital to retrain in agriculture. For now, he plans on sticking with his current job, despite a promise he made to his late older brother, a sand miner who lost his life in the river.
I cannot continue working as a sand miner forever. You know, when I think about it, I don't even feel like going to work tomorrow.
Many unemployed young men risk their lives for mining sand from bed of the Sanaga River. Cameroon's jobless rate is over 30%, a situation that's been exacerbated by the tens of thousands who have lost their jobs because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, on Thursday, thousands of people around the world have answered a call by South Africa's president to celebrate the country's Heritage Day by posting clips of themselves doing the viral Jerusalem dance online. Posts of people coming together came in from around the world. The routine, though, for the song was created by a group of Angolan friends whose video of themselves dancing to the song helped it rack up over 150 million views online. The South African producer of Jerusalema, Master KG, says that he's nothing but grateful for the support and celebration.
What I want, at the end of the day, the music I'm making into the people. If the people are accepting it with both hands and owning it, now the song is no longer my song, it's a song for everybody, it's a song for the world, Yeah, that's what I like. I love everything that is happening. People are sending messages on a daily basis that the song is healing them, doing all sorts of kind of things, and it's amazing,
Jerusalem, ikayalami, ilonoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana, dawo yami, alikolana, buso wami.
We are journalists, and normally you have to listen to us, but you have things to tell us too. Maybe you've experienced a dramatic event, or you've got something important to say. You want to make a difference. That is why we created The Observers. Now, the first step is very easy. You get in touch with our team. Send us your images, tell us what you've seen. And then it's our job to get your voice out there, on our site, on social networks, on your mobiles and tablets, and on TV, of course. You can appear in our weekly show via webcam. Or perhaps we'll come see you in person, where you live, in your country, your town, and we'll work together on a report for our investigative show, The Observers Direct. So you get the idea. This show is your show, your way to get your voice out to the world.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.